Success does not begin with outcomes. It begins with belief. Not the loud, motivational kind, but the quiet belief that what you do today matters even when no one applauds, even when nothing seems to change. This is where most people misunderstand success. They think it starts when results appear. But results are the echo, not the voice. The voice is purpose. When people say someone is lucky, what they're really saying is, I didn't see the years of intention behind the moment. Luck becomes a convenient label when we don't understand the process. Because if success were luck, then it would be random. And if it were random, then responsibility would disappear. But deep down, we know that's not true. We know that the people who succeed consistently are not guessing their way forward. They are choosing their way forward. Every meaningful journey starts with a reason. Not money, not fame, not validation. A reason, a cause, a belief. Something that answers the question, why am I willing to keep going when this gets hard? Because it will get hard. That part is guaranteed. Purpose is what gives discipline its meaning. Without it, habits feel like punishment. With it, habits feel like alignment. When you know why you're doing what you're doing, waking up early stops feeling like sacrifice. Say no to distractions stops feeling like deprivation. Consistency stops feeling boring and starts feeling powerful. People who succeed don't wake up every day asking, what will I get today? They wake up asking, what do I stand for today? And that question changes everything. It changes how they make decisions. It changes how they respond to setbacks. It changes how long they're willing to stay in the game, because success is not about speed. It's about direction. When your direction is clear, small steps make sense. Without direction, even big moves feel empty. That's why so many people feel busy, but unfulfilled. They're moving, but they're not aligned. They're chasing outcomes without anchoring themselves to purpose. Purpose turns ordinary actions into meaningful habits. It transforms routine into ritual. And over time, those rituals become identity. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. Success does not require massive change. It requires consistent alignment. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to decide who you are becoming and then behave accordingly every day. When you know your why, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, should I do this? And start asking, does this serve what I believe? And that clarity removes friction. Decisions become simpler. Discipline becomes lighter. This is why purpose-driven people seem calm under pressure. They're not calm because they're confident in the outcome. They're calm because they're confident in their reason. They know why they're there. And when you know why you're there, temporary failure doesn't feel like the end. It feels like part of the path. Luck has no memory. Purpose does. Luck doesn't show up tomorrow because it showed up yesterday. But purpose does. Purpose wakes up with you. It walks with you through uncertainty. It keeps you moving when motivation disappears. And motivation will disappear. Motivation is emotional. Purpose is structural. Motivation depends on mood. Purpose depends on meaning. That's why motivation burns out, but purpose endures. When success is driven by purpose, habits stop being about self-control and start being about self-respect. You don't show up because you're forced to. You show up because not showing up would betray who you say you are. That's the shift. Success doesn't come from chasing rewards. It comes from honoring identity, and identity is built through repetition. Every day you act in alignment with your why. You reinforce the belief that you are someone who follows through, someone who keeps promises, especially the ones made in silence. Over time, that belief becomes unshakable. Confidence grows not because you win, but because you trust yourself. People think confidence comes from success. In reality, success comes from confidence, and confidence comes from consistency rooted in purpose. This is why two people can face the same obstacle and have completely different outcomes. One sees a reason to quit. The other sees a reason to commit deeper. Difference isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's clarity. When you lack clarity, discomfort feels like a warning. When you have clarity, discomfort feels like confirmation. It tells you you're doing something that matters. And this is where success quietly separates people. Not in the spotlight, not at the finish line, but in the unseen moments where no one is forcing you to choose discipline, where no one is watching, where the only thing guiding you is what you believe. If your belief is weak, habits collapse. If your belief is strong, habits compound. So before you ask how to succeed, ask why you want to succeed. Before you design systems, design meaning. Because systems without purpose eventually break. Purpose without systems eventually fades. But when the two come together, success stops being something you chase and starts being something you practice. And practice long enough, it stops feeling like effort. It starts feeling like who you are. That is why success is never luck, it is. Belief, repeated daily, until it becomes inevitable. Big dreams are seductive. They sound powerful when spoken out loud. They feel inspiring when written in bold letters at the top of a page. But dreams on their own are fragile. They live in the future. And the future is easy to postpone. Habits, on the other hand, live in the present. And the present is where success is actually built. Most people don't fail because they lack ambition. They fail because ambition has no structure. They want massive change, but they ignore the small behaviors required to support it. They wait for the moment when everything feels right, when energy is high, when conditions are perfect. But success does not wait for perfect conditions. It responds to consistent action. Small habits don't look impressive. That's why people underestimate them. They don't create instant transformation. They don't deliver quick applause. But they do something far more powerful. They create momentum. And momentum is what turns intention into reality. When you rely on big moves, you live in a cycle of excitement and disappointment. You start strong, fueled by emotion, and then you slow down when the emotion fades. But when you rely on small habits, you remove emotion from the equation. You don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? You ask, what does consistency require today? That question is easier to answer, and more importantly, it's easier to repeat. Success is rarely the result of one bold decision. It's the result of many ordinary decisions made correctly, over and over again. People want the dramatic turning point, but life doesn't usually change in dramatic moments. It changes quietly, in routines that seem insignificant at the time. Extra page, read each day, doesn't feel like much. One short workout does feel life-changing. One focused hour of work doesn't feel extraordinary, and yet, repeated long enough. These small actions reshape identity. You stop being someone who wants to improve and start being someone who improves. The habit becomes evident. And evidence is what builds belief. This is where intention often breaks down. People confuse wanting with doing. They tell themselves that because they care progress should happen naturally. But caring does not create results. Behavior does. And behavior is shaped by habit. Small habits remove the pressure of perfection. You don't need to get everything right. You just need to show up. And showing up daily lowers resistance. It trains your mind to see effort as normal rather than exceptional. When habits are small, excuses lose their power. You can always find a reason not to do something big. But it's hard to justify not doing something small. That's the hidden strength of habit. It sneaks past resistance. And once resistance is gone, consistency becomes possible. Consistency is not about intensity. It's about reliability. It's about becoming someone who can be counted on by others, but more importantly by yourself. Every time you complete a small habit, you send a message to your brain, I follow through. Over time, that message becomes an identity. Identity is the real prize, not results. Results fluctuate. Identity endures. People who succeed consistently are not obsessed with outcomes. They are obsessed with process. They don't ask, did I win today? They ask, did I practice the habit today? Because they understand that winning is a lagging indicator. Habits are leading indicators. This is why small habits are more powerful than big intentions. Intentions are invisible. Habits are visible. Intentions make you feel good. Habits make you better. And here's the paradox. The smaller the habit, the more likely it is to last. And the more likely it is to last, the more powerful it becomes. Think about the habits that shape your life right now. They didn't arrive overnight. They formed gradually through repetition. Success habits work the same way. They don't demand a new personality. They shape one. People often say they don't have time. What they really mean is that the habit hasn't become a priority yet. Time is not found, it's allocated. And habits are how you protect what matters from the chaos of daily life. When something becomes a habit, it no longer competes for attention. It simply happens. That's when progress accelerates. Not because you're working harder, but because you're working with less friction. Small habits also build resilience. When progress is slow, habits keep you moving. When results are invisible, habits keep you grounded. They act as anchors in uncertainty. You don't need reassurance when you have routine. This is why success looks boring from the outside. It's not filled with constant excitement. It's filled with consistency. The same actions, repeated long enough to become automatic. Luck depends on timing, habits depend on choice. You may not control outcomes, but you always control your habits. And that control is what gives you leverage over time. The people who achieve the most are not the ones who dream the biggest. They are the ones who commit to the smallest actions for the longest time. They understand that greatness is not built through occasional effort, but through daily alignment. So don't ask yourself what dramatic change you need to make. Ask yourself what small habit you can repeat without negotiation. Start there. Protect it. Repeat it. Let it compound. Because in the end, success is not the result of one perfect decision. It is the result of many small decisions that felt almost too simple to matter until they did. Discipline is often misunderstood. People think it's about force, restriction, or denying yourself the things you enjoy. They see it as punishment, something you endure until success arrives. But discipline is not about control. It's about commitment. And commitment only makes sense when it's connected to something bigger than comfort. Reason discipline feels heavy for so many people is because it's disconnected from meaning. When there is no clear reason, discipline feels like suffering. But when there is clarity, discipline feels like protection. It protects your time. It protects your focus. It protects the future you're trying to build from the distractions of the present. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation rises and falls with mood, energy, and circumstances. Discipline does not. It is not dependent on how you feel. It is dependent on what you've decided. And that decision, once made, removes the daily negotiation that drains so much energy. Most people don't fail because they can't do hard things. They fail because they keep renegotiating with themselves. Every morning becomes a debate. Every challenge becomes a question. Discipline ends the debate. It says, this is who I am. This is what I do. And once that identity is established, momentum begins to form. Momentum is not created by intensity. It's created by reliability. Doing the right thing once feels good. Doing the right thing repeatedly builds trust. And trust, especially self-trust, is what carries you forward. Progress feels slow. When you act with discipline, you remove uncertainty. You no longer wonder if you'll show up. You already know the answer. That certainty reduces stress. It frees mental space. It allows you to focus on execution instead of decision-making. This is why disciplined people often appear calm under pressure. They are not calm because the situation is easy. They are calm because their response is already decided. They don't panic when things go wrong because discipline has prepared them for resistance. Discipline also creates momentum by narrowing your options. Freedom is not about having endless choices. Freedom is about having clear priorities. When everything is an option, nothing is stable. Discipline eliminates noise so that progress becomes possible. And here's the paradox. The more disciplined you are, the more freedom you experience. Because discipline removes chaos. It replaces confusion with direction. It allows you to invest energy instead of constantly reacting. People often wait to feel ready before committing to discipline. But readiness is not a prerequisite. Action creates readiness. You don't become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by practicing it, especially when it's inconvenient. The first few days feel heavy. The first few weeks feel uncomfortable. That's not a sign that discipline isn't working. That's a sign that you're breaking old patterns. Resistance is not a warning. It's confirmation. Momentum doesn't arrive all at once. It builds gradually. One completed habit leads to another. One disciplined choice reinforces the next. Over time, effort becomes routine. What once required willpower begins to require less energy. This is how discipline creates momentum. It reduces friction. It turns progress into a default setting rather than a struggle. Discipline also changes how you interpret failure. Instead of seeing setbacks as evidence that you're not capable, you see them as feedback. Disciplined people don't collapse under mistakes. They adjust and continue because their commitment is not tied to flawless execution. It's tied to long-term direction. Luck reacts to opportunity. Discipline creates opportunity. People often say successful individuals are in the right place at the right time. What they don't see is that discipline put them there early and kept them there long enough for opportunity to appear. Luck may open a door, but discipline ensures you're standing close, enough to walk through it. Momentum also attracts confidence, not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. When you consistently keep promises to yourself, doubt loses its grip. You stop questioning your ability to follow through, and that belief fuels further action. This is why discipline is contagious. Once momentum starts, it spills into other areas of life. A disciplined morning improves your focus. Improved focus improves your work. Better work improves your confidence. And confidence reinforces discipline. It's a loop. And once you're inside it, progress accelerates. But the loop only begins when discipline replaces excuses. Excuses are comfortable. They protect ego. Discipline challenges ego. It asks you to choose growth over comfort. Not once, but daily. And here's the truth most people avoid. Discipline is not about doing more. It's about doing less better. It's about choosing what matters and eliminating what doesn't. When your energy is scattered, progress slows. When your energy is focused, momentum becomes inevitable. You don't need perfect discipline. You need consistent discipline. Even imperfect discipline moves you forward. Inconsistency, however, keeps you stuck. Success doesn't require superhuman willpower. It requires a system that supports discipline, even when willpower fades. Structure beats motivation every time. And once discipline becomes part of who you are, success stops feeling like something you're chasing. It starts feeling like something you're moving with. Because momentum doesn't come from luck. It comes from discipline. Practice daily until forward motion becomes your natural state. Consistency is not glamorous. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. In fact, most of the time, it looks invisible. And that's exactly why so many people underestimate it. They're waiting for transformation to feel dramatic, to arrive with fireworks and recognition, but real change doesn't enter loudly. It accumulates quietly. People are fascinated by overnight success stories. They want the moment, not the process. They want the result without the repetition. But consistency doesn't care about moments. It cares about patterns. And patterns repeated long enough become outcomes. The most powerful force in progress is not talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. It is compounding. And compounding only responds to consistency. When effort is applied repeatedly in the same direction, its impact multiplies. Not immediately, not predictably, but inevitably. This is where many people lose faith. They do the right things for a short period of time, see little progress, and assume it's not working. But consistency doesn't work on your timeline. It works on its own. And the early stages always feel unrewarding because results lag behind effort. Consistency asks for trust before it offers proof. Every day you show up, you're making a deposit. But deposits don't feel satisfying until interest appears. And interest appears only after time. That delay is where most people quit. Not because the work is too hard, but because the reward is too far away. Those who succeed understand this delay. They don't measure progress by visible outcomes alone. They measure it by alignment. They ask, did I show up today? Not did I win today? Because they know that winning is simply the long-term result of showing up consistently. Consistency also shapes identity in a way nothing else can. You can't fake it. You can't borrow it. You earn it through repetition. Each time you repeat a behavior, you reinforce a belief about who you are. Over time, those beliefs solidify into identity. You don't wake up one day confident, you wake up confident after proving to yourself repeatedly that you can be relied on. This is why consistency is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is emotional. Identity is behavioral. Motivation makes you feel like acting. Identity makes action feel natural. When something becomes part of your identity, you no longer need reminders. You don't need pressure. You don't need external validation. The behavior sustains itself because not doing it would feel wrong. Consistency removes the drama from progress. It replaces intensity with stability. And stability is what allows growth to last. This is also why inconsistency is so damaging. It doesn't just slow results, it erodes trust. Every time you break a promise to yourself, doubt grows louder. You start questioning your ability to follow through. And once self-trust weakens, even simple tasks feel heavy. Consistency rebuilds that trust, slowly, quietly, but deeply. And here's the part most people miss. Consistency is not about doing the same thing perfectly. It's about doing the same thing repeatedly, even imperfectly. Progress doesn't require flawlessness. It requires persistence. Miss a day, and consistency is not broken. Quit entirely. And it is. The danger is not in slipping. It's in stopping. Those who succeed don't avoid mistakes. They avoid abandonment. Compounding also works emotionally. Small wins accumulate into confidence. Confidence accumulates into courage. Courage accumulates into leadership. None of these appear suddenly. They grow through consistent action. This is why people who stay consistent often look lucky later. When the results finally show, outsiders see a leap. But the leap is an illusion. It's the visible result of countless invisible steps. Luck creates spikes. Consistency creates curves. Spikes are exciting but unstable. Curves are slow but unstoppable. Consistency also protects you during hard seasons. When motivation disappears, habits remain. When clarity fades, routines guide you. When results stall, consistency keeps you from quitting prematurely. It acts as a stabilizer, a constant in an unpredictable world. And the longer you stay consistent, the more leverage you gain. Skills sharpen, judgment improves, effort becomes efficient. What once took massive energy now takes less. That's compounding at work. This is why experienced people seem to progress faster. Not because they work harder, but because their consistency has reduced friction. They're not studying from zero each time. They're building on a foundation. Consistency also creates credibility, not through words, but through behavior. People trust those who show up repeatedly. Opportunities follow reliability. Influence follows predictability. Over time, consistency becomes a signal of competence. You don't need to convince anyone. When your actions speak daily, the truth is, success doesn't reward intensity. It rewards endurance. Anyone can start strong. Few can stay steady. And staying steady is what separates those who dream from those who build. So if progress feels slow, don't ask if it's working. Ask if you're repeating it. If results feel distant, don't search for shortcuts. Strengthen your consistency. Because eventually, repetition turns into reputation, effort turns into expertise, and habits turn into identity. That's when success stops feeling fragile. It stops feeling temporary. It stops feeling like luck. It feels earned. It feels stable. It feels inevitable. Because consistency, practiced long enough, always compounds. Environment is the silent force behind behavior. It shapes decisions before we are even aware we are making them. Most people believe success is purely a matter of willpower, as if the strongest person always wins. But willpower is unreliable. It fades with stress, with fatigue, with distraction. Environment, however, is always working either for you or against you. People don't rise to the level of their intentions. They fall to the level of their surroundings. If you place a disciplined person in a chaotic environment long enough, discipline erodes. If you place an average person in a supportive environment, growth becomes likely. This isn't weakness, it's human nature. We are designed to adapt to what surrounds us. The question is not whether environment influences you. The question is whether you are shaping it intentionally. Most habits are not conscious choices. They are responses. Responses to cues, expectations, and norms. And those cues are embedded in environment. What you see, what you hear, who you're around, what is rewarded, what is tolerated, these things quietly dictate behavior. This is why trying to change your life without changing your environment feels exhausting. You are constantly swimming upstream. You are relying on effort to fight structure, and effort always loses in the long run. Successful people understand this. They don't rely on self-control alone. They design their surroundings to support the behaviors they want. They make the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. Not because they're weak, but because they're wise. Environment includes more than physical space. It includes people, conversations, expectations, standards. If you surround yourself with people who normalize excuses, excuses become comfortable. If you surround yourself with people who normalize growth, growth becomes inevitable. You don't need everyone around you to agree with you. You need them to respect the direction you're heading. Progress stalls when your environment pulls you backward. Wow. You're trying to move forward. This is why some people feel energized in certain spaces and drained in others. It's not random. It's alignment. Environments either reinforce who you're becoming or remind you of who you used to be. And here's the hard truth. Not every environment is meant to come with you into the future. Some spaces, some routines, some relationships belong to a previous version of you. Holding onto them out of comfort can quietly sabotage growth. Environment also shapes standards. What is acceptable around you becomes acceptable within you. If being late is normal, discipline feels unnecessary. If mediocrity is praised, excellence feels uncomfortable. But if high standards are visible and consistent, they pull behavior upward. This is why leadership matters, not just formal leadership, but personal leadership. You lead yourself by choosing what you allow into your environment. What you tolerate becomes your baseline, and your baseline determines your trajectory. Environment doesn't demand effort. It demands awareness. Small changes in environment can produce massive shifts in behavior. Removing a distraction can restore focus. Adding a visual reminder can reinforce purpose. Adjusting a routine can unlock consistency. These changes don't require motivation. They require intention. People often wait to feel strong enough to change. But strength is built after the environment changes, not before. You don't change your environment because you're disciplined. You become disciplined because you changed your environment. This is why success seems easier for some people. It's not that they face less resistance. It's that their environment absorbs some of it. Their surroundings support their habits instead of fighting them. Luck places you in an environment temporarily. Choice places you in one permanently. And over time, environment shapes identity. You start to act in ways that feel normal within your surroundings. When growth is normal, progress accelerates. When stagnation is normal, effort feels pointless. This is why environment is not a background detail. It is a strategic tool, one that either accelerates or delays success. Even language is part of environment. The words you hear daily shape belief. Conversations focused on possibility expand thinking. Conversations focused on limitation shrink it. You don't need blind positivity. You need constructive perspective. Environment also includes what you consume. Information, media, ideas, what you repeatedly expose yourself to trains your attention. Attention shapes focus. Focus shapes outcomes. If your environment constantly pulls your attention away from what matters, consistency becomes impossible. But if your environment reinforces focus, habits strengthen naturally. You don't have to escape the world to succeed, but you do have to be selective. Selective about what you let influence you. Selective about what you give access to your time and energy. The most successful people are not immune to distraction. They've simply reduced its presence. They've made discipline easier by design. And this is where environment and habit merge. Habits survive when environment supports them. Without support, even good habits collapse under pressure. With support, habits endure. So if you want to change your behavior, don't start by blaming yourself. Start by examining your surroundings. Ask what's helping you and what's hindering you. Ask what needs to be removed, what needs to be added, and what needs to be reinforced. Because success is not just about what you do, it's about what's around. What you do. When your environment aligns with your values, effort feels lighter. When your environment supports your habits, consistency becomes natural. When your environment reflects who you're becoming, progress accelerates. And in that alignment, success stops feeling like a struggle. It starts feeling like the natural result of the world you've intentionally built around yourself. Success is never an accident, and it is never a gift handed out at random. It is the predictable result of choices made repeatedly, often quietly, often without recognition. What we call luck is usually the moment when preparation, discipline, consistency, and environment finally reveal themselves to the world. By the time success is visible, it has already been earned many times over. When you understand that success is a habit, everything changes. You stop chasing short C. You tease and start building foundations. You stop waiting for motivation and start designing systems. You stop measuring progress by applause and start measuring it by alignment with your values and actions. Success becomes less about dramatic breakthroughs and more about daily integrity. Purpose gives direction to effort. Habits give structure to purpose. Discipline gives habits the strength to endure. Consistency allows those habits to compound. An environment protects all of it from collapsing under pressure. None of these work alone. They create momentum that no single moment of luck can replace. The people who succeed are not always the smartest or the most talented. They are the most aligned between what they believe, what they do, and what they allow around them. That alignment turns effort into identity. And once success becomes part of who you are, it no longer depends on circumstances. There will be days when progress feels invisible, days when effort seems unrewarded, days when quitting feels logical. Those moments are not signs of failure. They're tests of consistency. Success is built by those who keep going when nothing appears to be happening, trusting that compounding is at work even when results are delayed. You do not need perfect discipline. You need reliable discipline. You do not need massive change. You need small actions repeated without negotiation. And you do not need luck to succeed. You need ownership. Ownership of your habits, ownership of your standards, ownership of your environment. When you take ownership, you regain control, and when you regain control, confidence grows. Not the loud kind, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can depend on yourself. Success, then, stops being something you hope for and starts being something you practice. Every day becomes a vote for the future you are building. Every habit becomes proof of your commitment. Every consistent action moves you closer to inevitability. In the end, luck may open a door once, but habits decide whether you stay in the room. Choose your habits carefully. Repeat them relentlessly. Shape your environment intentionally. And trust the process long enough for compounding to reveal what you've been building all along. Because success was never about chance. It was always about who you chose to become one day at a time.